your parents don't understand you. This is true. It's been true for generations. My mom was sure that her parents didn't understand her because of the music she listened to or the things she chose to protest. I was pretty sure that my parents didn't understand me because of the music I listened to or the things that I chose to protest. But the truth is, your generation is entirely unique in history. In part because you still listen to some of the things my mom and my generation listened to, but really because you're the first generation to grow up entirely social, entirely mobile, and entirely available to have access to everything that has ever been written at any moment. You're the first generation to have to figure out how to keep incoming messages straight from as many as 14 platforms at once. You're the first generation to have to try and figure out in an hour or less how to renegade on TikTok, knowing that it will be irrelevant in 2 or 3 days anyway. And you're the first generation to have to deal with the fact that everything you write or post or share, everything has the risk of being judged by everybody you know. You are a very, very different generation than anyone that has come before you. And an entirely underestimated generation in your capacity to make change. I got a super lucky break when I was 15. I got a job as a reporter, like an actual reporter. Back when news came in newspaper, my mom would drop me off behind the newspaper and I would write stories, talk to governors and senators and things. And having that head start meant by the time I was 22, I got to be one of the first employees on a presidential campaign. And we were running against the Vice President of the United States. So Air Force Two would land and all of these great big black SUVs would roll by and they were like, who's here for the Vice President? And all of these people would be there and there's like, who's here for the US Senator from New Jersey? And I'm like, hi, I'm Brian, I'm 22 and I drive a Saturn with 200,000 miles and my team is mostly made up of high school students. But those high school students were our secret weapon. We had 18-year-olds that said, I'm done enough with high school. I want to help run a presidential campaign because that's something you can do. And because they got that head start, I remember 2 of them. One, within 3 years, ran his own multi-million-dollar e-commerce company in the education space. And the other, by the time he was 23, was running events for 30,000 people at a time. Because we knew what other people didn't, which is the power of that generation. Then I swore off politics for a while and became the managing director of a business consulting firm. And we hired all of these incredible people from Deloitte and Accenture and KPMG and McKinsey. But our secret weapon was hiring people who were still teenagers and still in college. Because what they knew, what all of these folks in their 40s and 50s and even late 30s didn't know, was how to use things like Google and all of these back then new technologies to be able to create incredible research dossiers against everybody we competed against. We knew they knew more than we did because they were younger, and we leveraged that. And of those, one of those kids helped grew a $1 billion advertising platform, and another sold his company to Facebook for millions of dollars. Our secret weapons. I then went back into politics because my friend thought it would be fun to be governor, and it probably was for him. He had an impossible race. There was no way we were going to win it. They had bussed in all of these people in their 40s and 50s from all over the country to try and stop us. But we knew that there was an entire generation of geniuses that were 15, 16, 17, and 18, and we put them on payroll. Because they knew what we didn't know, which was how to leverage nascent social media networks to really turn out voters. And so those 16, 17, and 18-year-olds that were on payroll, not only did they make my friend governor of Delaware, they went on to become best-selling authors. They went on to become editors at places like CNN and Recode. They went on to become heads of global private equity funds, all because they started at 15 and 16. So then I did the governor thing for a couple years, and my friend thought, let's build a sports network. And I said, great, I'm not remotely athletic. Let's do that. And I quit, and I joined them, and I realized that I didn't really know much about sports or really all that much about media, but I knew a lot of people who were younger and smarter than me, and I called one of them and I said, Julie, I'm building a sports network. And she said, that's crazy, you're not athletic. And I'm like, that's true. I said, but I know you, and you are, and you're also smarter than I am. What do you know? And she said, this was 2012, she said, well, I know that I'm a founding member of YouTube Sports, and I know there's these 5 guys in Texas that make trick shots in their backyard. And I know that more people in 2012 and 13 are interested in watching these young people create videos in their backyards than could ever be interested in watching TV. So maybe if we rolled up all of these young people together, we could create something more valuable than if we had just tried to do the traditional 20 and 30-year-old media play itself. So we grew that to 9-figure valuation in a couple years, and we got to know Dude Perfect and folks like that when they were still just 5 guys in their backyards. So left that, sold another company, thought it'd be fun to start something else, put out on Facebook, hey, I'm going to build something else, anybody want in? And a couple people that I knew through a nonprofit that were teenagers were like, yeah, let's do it. So I'm like, great, you're younger than me, you're smarter than me, you're more wired than I am, you're more engaged with how to connect with customers than I ever could be because it's inherently your generation. Why don't we build a company together? And within 6 weeks of launching, we did $2.5 million of business. And every single customer of that business that went through and had a great experience was talking to somebody between 18 and 22 years old who just knew better than any of us could how to really engage in an incredible experience with those customers. So those are all some really great stories about things that you could, should, and will be able to do. But each of those are you joining somebody else's thing, right? Somebody else's campaign for governor, somebody else's decision to build a company. What's unique about your moment in history is that you can be the CEO yourself. You don't need to join anybody else's thing anymore. Every single aspect of technology is available to you to start your own company. And it's only by starting your own company that these headlines that were the kind of thing I grew up watching about my dad and my families, and so many of you are watching about your families, starting your own company is the only way to make sure that these don't impact your daily lives. See, you don't even need to own anything anymore. By the end of this weekend, if you want to, you can go to Shopify and start a storefront. You can buy a handful of Google ads to see if your company makes any sense. You can create a bunch of lead pages to send people to Facebook to get email addresses to know whether or not it's worth buying things. You can create content that's SEO searchable so that you can have referral links within the articles you're writing. Like the next time you feel like you really just want to get off your chest how you're feeling about something, remember that there are people that write about mattresses. They're like 20 years old. They write about mattresses. They're making $2 million a year writing about their profound feelings on mattresses and including links in those articles to be able to sell those mattresses. You could decide if you want to work really, really hard for $14 an hour doing really, really difficult work at some of the sponsors of today's TEDx, or you could go on, write some articles, have some blog words and some affiliate links, and be able to make $50 by the end of tomorrow night. All available to you. This is one of my favorite people in the world. When Treyas was 14, he started private school near here. And he realized he had to wear a tie. And okay, that was the cost of having to go to school, was he had to wear a tie. But he hated the ties that were available to him. And he thought, you know what? I'm part of this generation that has no obstacles to building my own company. So he figured out a way, without having to make the ties himself, without having to manufacture anything, he found a way to be able to take a manufacturer, create his own storefront called Novel Ties, and be able to sell really funny and engaging ties at first to his classmates and then to people all over the country. By the time he graduated 3 or 4 years later, he was doing 6 figures in gross as a high school student selling novel ties from scratch. He said one of the funniest moments was seeing a guy in his 60s wear one of his ties. He's like, that's not even, okay, no, great, give us the money. Kyla, before she was in high school, and this is what I mean about the power of your generation, she got very, very worried as an 8th grader about cybersecurity and the threat to American infrastructure from cyber attacks against her school and her neighborhood. And because she grew up the same way you are, wired, available to know things, available to learn things, by the time she was a freshman, she created an organization dedicated to building cybersecurity curriculum so that teenagers all over the country could know more than their parents or grandparents about how to protect themselves, their communities, and their neighborhoods. 2 stories, 2 teenagers, 2 multi-million-dollar impacts before they even got to sophomore year. So that is something your parents don't understand about you. And I think at this point, that's some of what you don't even know about yourself. By the end of this weekend, I hope at least 5 of you have decided to start your own thing. By the end of this month, I'm sure that many of you will have been able to pay for your first year of college if you want to. And by the time you graduate, you'll be able to say, the next time your parents look at you and say, get off your damn phone, because they say that. The next time your parents look at you and say, get off your damn phone, you can look back at them and say, but Dad, I'm making thousands of dollars and changing thousands of lives, because what you don't know about my generation is that that's what we do. Thanks so much.